The Halloween mask. Jimmy found the creepy mask in the attic. It was old and dusty, with a twisted smile and empty eyes. Perfect for Halloween. He put it on and looked in the mirror. The mask fit perfectly, too perfectly. Jimmy tried to take it off, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in. He pulled harder, but the mask seemed to tighten. It started to burn. Jimmy screamed, but the sound was muffled. The mask's smile grew wider. He felt his face changing underneath, molding to fit the mask, becoming the mask. When his mom came to check on him, she found an empty room. But in the mirror, a figure with a twisted smile and empty eyes waved at her. Now every Halloween, kids see a strange trick-or-treater. One with a mask that looks too real, and those who look too long find themselves unable to look away. The haunted pumpkin patch. Sarah loved picking pumpkins on Halloween. This year, she found a new patch at the edge of town. The pumpkins were huge and perfectly orange. Sarah walked deeper into the patch, searching for the best one. Suddenly, she tripped. Looking down, she saw a vine wrapped around her ankle. It was pulsing, like it was alive. More vines shot out of the ground, wrapping around her arms and legs. The pumpkins around her started to move. Their carved faces glowed with an eerie light. They rolled towards her, their mouths opening wide to reveal sharp, jagged teeth. Sarah screamed as the vines pulled her down. The pumpkins crowded around, their hungry mouths ready to feast. The next day, there was a new pumpkin in the patch. One with a face that looked strangely like Sarah's, frozen in a silent scream. The trick-or-treat trap. Billy always went trick-or-treating alone. This Halloween, he found a house he'd never seen before. It was old and creaky, with flickering lights, perfect for Halloween candy. He knocked on the door. It creaked open by itself. Inside, he saw mountains of candy. Billy stepped in, his eyes wide. The door slammed shut behind him. The candy started to move, forming a giant wave. It crashed over Billy, burying him. He tried to swim out, but the candy was like quicksand, pulling him down. As he sank, he saw other kids trapped in the candy, their faces frozen in fear. They reached out to him with candy-coated hands. Now, every Halloween, the mysterious house appears in a new neighborhood, waiting for lonely trick-or-treaters to add to its collection. The costume that came alive. Emma's mom made her a witch costume for Halloween. It was perfect, with a pointy hat and a long black dress. As soon as Emma put it on, she felt strange. Her fingers tingled. Her skin turned green. She looked in the mirror and gasped. Her nose had grown long and crooked. Her eyes glowed yellow. Emma tried to take off the costume, but it wouldn't come off. It was like it was part of her skin. She felt magic coursing through her veins. Words of spells she'd never heard filled her mind. Her mom called her for trick-or-treating. When Emma walked downstairs, her mom screamed. Now every Halloween, people see a real witch flying across the moon. And every year, another child goes missing, leaving behind only a perfectly made costume. The ghostly parade. Tom heard music outside. He looked out the window and saw a parade coming down the street. It was weird. All the people were see-through, and they were dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Tom watched as they marched past his house. They were singing a song he'd never heard before. Suddenly, one of them looked right at him. Its eyes were empty and black. It smiled and waved, beckoning Tom to join. Without thinking, Tom opened the door and stepped outside. The ghostly figure held out its hand. As soon as Tom touched it, he felt cold all over. He looked down and saw he was see-through too. The parade marched on, with a new member who looked just like Tom. Inside the house, Tom's body lay cold and still.
The cursed candy Jake got a weird piece of candy while trick-or-treating. It was black and shaped like a skull. He ate it, even though it tasted strange. That night, he had terrible nightmares. He dreamed of graveyards and skeletons dancing, of ghosts and monsters chasing him. When he woke up, his room was different. Everything was old and dusty. Cobwebs hung in the corners. He ran to find his parents, but the house was empty. Outside, the world looked gray and dead. Jake saw other kids wandering around, looking lost. They all had the same black candy in their hands. He realized too late, the candy hadn't just given him nightmares. It had trapped him in one. The Halloween mirror. Lisa's parents bought an old mirror for Halloween decorations. It was big and ornate, with strange symbols carved around the edge. On Halloween night, Lisa looked into the mirror. Her reflection winked at her, but Lisa hadn't winked. She touched the mirror. Her hand went right through. Something cold grabbed her and pulled. Lisa found herself on the other side of the mirror, but everything was wrong. The room was dark and decaying. Her reflection stood on the other side, smiling wickedly. It waved goodbye as the mirror surface turned solid. Lisa pounded on the glass, screaming, but no one could hear her. She was trapped in the mirror world. Now every Halloween, people see a girl in the old mirror, silently screaming for help. The living scarecrow. Farmer Joe's scarecrow always scared the crows away. This Halloween, it did more than that. As the sun set, the scarecrow's eyes began to glow. Its straw-stuffed body started to move. It climbed down from its post and walked towards the house. Its burlap mouth stretched into a grin. Farmer Joe saw it coming and ran inside. He locked the doors and windows, but the scarecrow was strong. It broke through the door like it was paper. Farmer Joe tried to fight, but the scarecrow was too strong. It wrapped him in its scratchy straw arms. The next day, there was a new scarecrow in the field, one that looked strangely like Farmer Joe. The haunted Halloween decorations. The Johnson family always had the best Halloween decorations. This year was no different, but as night fell on Halloween, the decorations started to change. The plastic skeletons grew real bones. The fake cobwebs spread, covering the house. The jack-o'-lantern's eyes glowed with real fire. The rubber bats came to life, flying around with sharp teeth. The zombie decorations climbed out of the ground, hungry for brains. The Johnsons tried to escape, but the decorations were everywhere. The house had become a real haunted house. Now, every Halloween, the Johnson house is the scariest on the block, and those who go in for candy never come out. The Halloween app. Tim downloaded a new Halloween app. It showed monsters through the phone camera. He pointed it at his room. A ghost appeared on the screen. Tim laughed. The graphics were so real. He walked around the house, seeing vampires, werewolves, and zombies everywhere. It was cool but creepy. Then he pointed the phone at himself. The screen showed a monster looking back at him. Tim dropped the phone in shock, but when he looked in the mirror, he saw the monster there too. He tried to delete the app, but it was too late. The monsters were no longer just on the screen. Now Tim sees monsters everywhere he looks. And to everyone else, Tim has become a monster too.
The haunted jack-o'-lantern. The old pumpkin sat on the porch, forgotten after Halloween. Its carved face started to rot, the eyes sinking in, the mouth growing wider. One night, it glowed again. Not with candlelight, but with an eerie green fire. It started to move, rolling down the steps. It left a trail of slime as it went. The pumpkin rolled through the neighborhood, growing bigger. With each house it passed, its mouth opened wide, sucking in Halloween decorations, stray cats, and even small dogs. Children who were out late trick-or-treating ran screaming as the massive pumpkin chased them. Its carved eyes now blinked, hungry for more. By midnight, the pumpkin was as big as a house. It rolled back to where it started, crushing cars and lampposts. In the morning, the town was empty. But on the porch sat a giant jack-o'-lantern, its smile wider than ever, filled with the screams of those it had devoured. The costume swap. Jake traded costumes with a stranger at the Halloween party. The zombie outfit was so realistic, the rot smell making him gag. As the night went on, Jake felt weird. His skin turned green. He felt so hungry. He bit his friend's arm, tasting blood. It tasted good, too good. Jake looked in a mirror. His reflection was rotting, chunks of flesh falling off. He wasn't wearing a costume anymore. He had become a real zombie. He saw the stranger who gave him the costume. The guy smiled, his eyes glowing red. "Thanks for the trade," the stranger said. "I was tired of being the undead. Your human body will do nicely." Jake tried to scream, but only a moan came out as he shambled towards the panicking crowd, hungry for brains. The ghostly parade. Tom heard music outside. He looked out the window and saw a parade coming down the street. It was weird. All the people were see-through, and they were dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Tom watched as they marched past his house. They were singing a song he'd never heard before. Suddenly, one of them looked right at him. Its eyes were empty and black. It smiled and waved, beckoning Tom to join. Without thinking, Tom opened the door and stepped outside. The ghostly figure held out its hand. As soon as Tom touched it, he felt cold all over. He looked down and saw he was see-through too. The parade marched on, with a new member who looked just like Tom. Inside the house, Tom's body lay cold and still. The living costume. Ben bought a zombie costume for Halloween. It looked so real. It was scary. When he put it on, it felt weird, like it was too tight, too warm. Ben looked in the mirror. The costume's fake wounds looked wet, real. He tried to take it off, but it wouldn't budge. The zipper was gone. Ben felt hungry, so hungry. He wanted to eat. Brains. His skin turned green. His eyes went white. He wasn't wearing a costume anymore. He had become the costume. Now every Halloween, a real zombie joins the trick-or-treaters, always looking for fresh brains. The mimic Jenny had an imaginary friend named Mimic. It could copy anything Jenny did. At first it was fun, but then Mimic started copying things Jenny didn't do. It knocked over vases, it drew on walls. It scared Jenny's little brother. Jenny's parents got angry at her. They didn't believe in Mimic. One night, Jenny woke up to see Mimic standing over her, but it didn't look imaginary anymore. It smiled with Jenny's face. "My turn to be real," it said in Jenny's voice. The next morning, Jenny's parents found their daughter changed. She said Mimic was gone. But sometimes, they catch her mimicking things she never used to do.
The old cemetery. On Halloween night, a group of teenagers dared each other to visit the old cemetery at midnight. They laughed nervously as they entered through the rusty gate that creaked ominously. The moon shone brightly above them as they walked among the tombstones covered in moss. Suddenly, one of them spotted something moving near an old grave covered in flowers. "What was that?" he asked, pointing into the shadows. They all turned to look but saw nothing except darkness. As they continued walking deeper into the cemetery, they heard whispers floating through the air, soft yet chilling. "Leave this place. Leave now." Suddenly, one of their flashlights flickered and went out. Panic set in as they stumbled around trying to find their way back to the gate. The whispers grew louder and more urgent. "Help help us! Help us!" Echoed voices surrounded them as shadows danced between tombstones. They finally reached an old crypt and decided to hide inside for safety. As they caught their breath inside its cold walls, they heard scratching sounds coming from outside. "Let us in," whispered a voice that sent chills down their spines. They huddled together as fear gripped their hearts. Suddenly, the door creaked open slowly, revealing ghostly figures standing in front of them, faces twisted in sorrow and rage. "Why did you disturb our rest?" they wailed as darkness closed in around them. In moments of terror, the teenagers vanished without a trace, leaving only silence behind as if they had never existed at all. The Witch's Curse. Long ago in a small village lived a witch named Alara, who was feared by everyone for her dark magic. One Halloween night, villagers gathered to celebrate, but dared not speak her name. A brave boy named Tom decided he would confront Alara and break her curse once and for all. Armed with nothing but courage, he ventured into woods where she lived alone in an old cabin hidden among trees. As he approached, he felt an icy wind blow past him, sending shivers down his spine, but he pressed on, determined. Knocking loudly on cabin door, Tom called out, "I'm not afraid of you." The door creaked open, revealing Alara standing there with wild hair and piercing eyes that glowed like fire. "What do you want?" she hissed menacingly. "I want to end your curse," Tom shouted bravely, but Alara only laughed darkly, shaking head slowly. "You think you can stop me?" Before he could respond, a blinding light-filled room, Tom found himself trapped within visions of villagers suffering under Witch's wrath. "Join me, or face my curse," Alara warned, raising hands high, summoning shadows swirling around him, threatening to consume everything. Desperate now, Tom remembered tales told by elders about kindness breaking curses. "I forgive you," he shouted against fear, hoping words would reach her heart. For a moment, silence fell heavy. But then Alara's expression softened slightly, before darkness erupted once more, engulfing Tom completely. When villagers searched woods next day, they found only an empty cabin, but whispers lingered still, warning others never forget power hidden within curses cast long ago.
The Scarecrow's Revenge. In a quiet farm surrounded by fields stood an old scarecrow dressed in tattered clothes. It watched over crops during day, but came alive at night seeking revenge against those who dared disturb peace. One Halloween night, a group of kids decided to play pranks on farmers. They snuck onto property, giggling mischievously, while planning tricks involving Scarecrow. "Let's knock its head off," one boy suggested, laughing loudly. But little did they know Scarecrow had been waiting patiently for such foolishness. As darkness fell, the kids approached cautiously, feeling excitement bubbling within. But once close enough, something shifted beneath straw, making them freeze instantly. Suddenly, the Scarecrow turned its head slowly, revealing glowing eyes filled with anger. "You dare disrespect me?" it growled deeply, sending chills racing through bodies. Panicking now, the kids tried running away, but found themselves trapped within fields, surrounded by shadows, lurking everywhere, closing in fast. "Join me," echoed haunting voice filling air, while Scarecrow raised arms high, summoning dark forces ready to claim souls lost forevermore. One brave girl stepped forward, shouting defiantly, "We're sorry," hoping words would reach whatever haunted this place. For a moment, silence fell heavy, but then laughter erupted, echoing eerily around, making hearts race faster than ever before. In moments, they vanished without trace, leaving only whispers lingering across fields, reminding others, never forget power held within forgotten places. Waiting patiently for next trespassers daring cross boundaries drawn long ago. The Witch's Brew on Halloween night. A group of friends gathered for fun-filled evening, preparing costumes, snacks, ready to celebrate together under bright stars shining above. But little did they know darkness lurked nearby, waiting patiently strike when least expected. They decided visit local legend about witch, rumored live deep woods brewing potions using strange ingredients collected throughout year. All believed cursed anyone crossed path without permission. Laughing nervously, they ventured forth, armed flashlights, laughter echoing through trees surrounding them, until finally reaching clearing where old cabin stood crooked. Leaning dangerously close, ground beneath feet, trembling slightly beneath weight carried upon shoulders, heavy burden, fear unknown ahead. As they approached, cabin door creaked open, inviting them inside, revealing dimly lit room-filled jars containing oddities, swirling colors, dancing wildly. Mesmerizing eyes drawn closer, despite warnings echoing loudly within minds urging caution. Remain vigilant against dangers lurking nearby. Suddenly, a figure emerged from shadows, cloaked black robe hiding face, completely obscured beneath hood, casting eerie glow surrounding everything, making hearts race faster than ever before. "What brings you here?" Witch asked softly, voice dripping honey sweetness, masking danger lurking just beneath surface, waiting strike when least expected. Catching unsuspecting prey unaware, completely unprepared. Facing consequences, actions taken lightly without thought, consideration given beforehand. One brave friend stepped forward, stammering nervously, explaining purpose, visit hoping gain knowledge about potions, seeking help, understanding magic, hidden world beyond reach. grasping tightly onto hope, believing kindness could break curses cast long ago. But Witch merely laughed chillingly, raising hands high, summoning shadows swirling around, ready claim lives lost forevermore, leaving nothing but echoes lingering still. Reminding others never forget power held within those who dwell among us, unseen waiting patiently, strike when least expected.